Welcome to the Book Show, a celebration of reading and writers. I'm Joe Donahue. New York Times bestselling author and former host of MSNBC's Hardball, Chris Matthews, offers a panoramic portrait of post-World War II America through the story of his life and career in his new book, This Country, My Life in Politics and History. As Chris charts his political odyssey, he paints a picture of a nation searching for its soul. He showcases the grand arc of the American story through one life dedicated to its politics. Chris Matthews is the author of New York Times bestsellers Bobby Kennedy, A Raging Spirit, Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, Tip and the Gipper, When Politics Worked, and of course, Hardball. For 20 years, he anchored a program by that very name, Hardball, with Chris Matthews on MSNBC. The new book is This Country, and we welcome Chris Matthews to this week's book show. How are you, sir?
John. Well, I'm good. It's a good weather. I'm up here with my wife, Kathleen. I'm looking at our flag flying. The weather is gorgeous. The high 70s, I guess. Clear and blue skies and green scrub all around us here.
Now, do you consider what stage you are in now to be retirement?
Well, I'm this sounds highfalutin, but I'm the distinguished professor of American politics and media at the Fulbright University of Vietnam right now in Ho Chi Minh City. And I'm doing that by Zoom. I'll be going over at the end of the year to do classes in person, but also using Zoom when I'm over there because I want a lot of American participants to be in the class. But it's a very bright group of students, and it's a wonderful chance to do something new and important.
What do you consider your opportunity there to be, to teach these students?
Well, I mean, globally, there's a fact out there, which is that we are, just as we were posed against each other in the Cold War, we are now posed together in alliance, in effect, vis-a-vis China. The people of Indochina, that whole region, have been in adversarial roles with China going back 1,000 years. And now China, of course, is imperial and growing in its strength and seizing more strength, as it's proven to be doing in Hong Kong and perhaps threatening Taiwan at some point. We're the Americans, we're the ones trying to protect those countries from being gobbled up, if you will. And I think the people of Vietnam are very wary of that possibility. In fact, I think that explains our close alliance these days, that America, which was very much in a tragic war with Vietnam, not too many years ago, now finds itself in bed with them politically because we're facing the same adversary, China.
So much of the origin story that you write about in the book has to do with you really coming of age through that Vietnam era. You write of your childhood, of course, in Philadelphia, but then going out into the world as a young political mind, where that was the place that really helped form your opinions. So what is it like then I mean, it seems full circle in some ways.
Well, so much of my life, especially with regard to politics and world affairs, has been full circle. You know, I was of the generation that was in the early years of the Cold War. And I went to a Catholic school, a regular parochial school, and the nuns would drill us fairly regularly on a possible nuclear attack by Russia. And it would have to have been long range bombers in that case. I don't think they had the ICBMs they have today back then, but we were very wary of the fact that we were hiding under our desks for 15 minutes and told there was going to be a flash of light and basically the end of the world. So that's a big part of growing up. And that went on, that experience with the Russians. I remember the day that the nuns announced that Joseph Stalin had died, and we all prayed together. And I guess for the fact of his deliverance, of his being gone, thank God he's gone. And then with the Cuban Missile Crisis, well, actually, the Hungarian revolt in 1956 was a big deal growing up. The fact that the Hungarians were trying to throw off the power of Moscow over them, the Russian tanks. And that was crushed. And then we saw Cuba and Sputnik and so many events. Everything seemed to be in the context of this global struggle between us and the Soviets. And of course, you know, Joe Biden, our president today, is meeting with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, in a very much adversarial situation. So that hasn't changed much. and makes me think how much of the struggle between the East and West was simply nationalism, and that ideology may have been the tool of the Soviets, and anti-communism the tool of the American side, but how much of it was just the imperial struggle regained that power by Putin in the modern Russia?
You know, I came to your book, and of course, and I've known and been aware of your career for so long, and have been very much a fan. But I come to this as an Irish Catholic kid from the suburbs of Philadelphia. You are maybe 2 decades older than I am. However, you're basically covering from Carter on, when I was sort of aware of being politically aware of what was going on. And I found that fascinating, of that view, because you're there from writing for Carter as a speechwriter for Carter, and then obviously going up to your career on television. Prior to that, though, you come from it was a Republican household, correct?
Very much so. My dad, I think, voted for Goldwater in '64. That stretched his loyalty, I think, but he did. He was a moderate Republican, but he voted for Goldwater. I think he worked for the city of Philadelphia. I think the only time he voted Democrat for anything was he voted for the mayor of Philadelphia that day, because he promised a pay raise to all the city employees of 10%. That's the only time. That's practicality. Took him away from the. In fact, I voted for the moderate Republican that year, Arlen Specter, who was the district attorney running for mayor. And I thought he was a clean new force in Philadelphia politics against the old sort of corrupt Democratic machine. And and my dad says, "You're voting against your dad's pay raise?" I mean, that was the first time I voted. But yeah, it's a Republican family. In fact, I write in the book about meeting George Herbert Walker Bush in the White House when he invited me and my family basically to see a movie upstairs and have dinner with he and his wife, Barbara, with some other people. And him asking me about my family as if the family were all Democrats. And I said, "Mr. President, I'm the only Democrat in the family." And several months later in the Roosevelt Room, when I was in there doing some interviews with other Hearst reporters and Hearst Corporation reporters, and he came over to me and said, "Has your dad changed your mind about things yet?" He's one of those old pals like Tip O'Neill that remembered everything about everybody they ever meet. I don't know how they do it. Reagan didn't have that skill. I think Nixon may have had it. Tip O'Neill had it. I think W, the junior Bush president, I think he had it too, that skill of remembering everything. I think so, more so. He's old school. In fact, he remembers who he doesn't like and who, he came up to me in New Hampshire last year and said, "You said I can't win." Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Senator, because I didn't think he could win because I saw the Democratic Party really being run by progressives. And I saw a poll that showed that 2/3 of the people voting were progressives. I said, how are they going to like Biden? It's going to be Bernie or it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. It can't be Biden. He's the moderate in the race. It turned out, though, that what happened was all the other moderates dropped out of the race. Biden was the last moderate standing, really, after Michael Bloomberg and Amy Klobuchar and Buttigieg were out. And I think a lot of progressives decided, at least some of them decided, that they couldn't win with a progressive. They had to make a practical choice to pick a moderate. Maybe the Democratic Party got matured and figured the only way we win is with Biden, so let's run Biden. And I think they made the smart move.
Chris Matthews is the author of the new book, This Country, My Life in Politics and History. So you come from a Republican family, and then the real test, it seems that you write about this, but you have a Catholic president. You have Kennedy, who's running for president, and it's religion over politics.
Yeah, it's back. Well, with me, my dad stuck with Republicans. My mom, and I didn't realize this, Joe, till way later, decades later, that Mom confided in my brother Jim, my younger brother, that she had voted for Kennedy. She never told Dad. She said, "Don't tell Dad." I mean, this is a patriarchal world back then. And I mean, the fact is that she was, Mary Teresa Shields, Irish Catholic to the core, row house Catholic. My dad was Protestant when they got married. His mother was from Northern Ireland, Presbyterian. Oh, we had a little family discussion about this at the time. And of course, another case where things turned around. I got to cover the Good Friday Accords up in Northern Ireland, and I saw the Protestants and Catholics agree to run the government together, which was a big improvement over the Troubles and killing each other. So that was like, well, there's so many cases where the things were one way, and then I got to watch the end of the Cold War in Budapest and Hungary, and then in Berlin, the wall coming down. Then I was able to watch, after being in Africa in the Peace Corps for those years, to see the fall of apartheid and the election of Nelson Mandela. I was there for that with Bishop Tutu. I mean, I've seen it. And as I just said, the coming together of some kind of a peace agreement in Northern Ireland between the Protestants and the Catholics. So a big part of my life is this arc of deliverance from bad things. And so I'm hopeful about a lot of things.
Does that make you more hopeful? Because a lot of us don't perhaps have the optimism you do, that it seems like we're in a really bad place.
Well, I do worry about the functioning of our democracy at home. I'm worried that that we went to war in Iraq for really no reason, and that the American people were led into that war by a president who had no oratorical skills or really great leadership skills, just an average person who was president. I would call George W. Bush, an average person. How could he talk us into that war? And he did. And I never bought the WMD argument. I thought that was just a ruse. They wanted to go into Iraq for the worst, God knows what reasons. And then Trump came along and says things that are clearly not true, like he won the election. And there are people that today, 3 out of 10 Republicans believe that he will be reinstated as president in August because he said so. Why would they believe it? Because he said so. Out of nowhere. There's no constitutional provision for reinstatement. The word is alien to the Constitution. There's no use of the word reinstatement in the Constitution. So why are people believing this? I worry about docility, people just willing to swallow whole nonsense. We never counted on that in a democracy, that people would just buy travesties of ideas that don't mean anything except they serve some sort of purpose of the politicians speaking them.
You write about Trump, and you interviewed him in 2016. You had Hardball on the road, and you were in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And there was a question from an audience member on where Trump stood on a woman's right to choose. And he answered by saying he was pro-life. And you had a hunch that he didn't know what he was talking about. And you said, what should the law be on abortion? Should it be a crime for the woman who has one? If so, how severe a penalty? I asked this question for 2 reasons. One, because it's so memorable of what the response was, but also you're one of those few people who even early on were able to nail him, get him to say something, because it didn't even seem 5 years after that occurred that people were really able to do that.
Well, I said at the time I had a hunch that he didn't know what he's talking about, and that he had bought onto the idea of being pro-life because he knew that was one element in putting together a conservative coalition, especially in places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. He knew what he was doing. But I also thought he was taking it literally, that people say abortion is a murder, that he would actually think that therefore it was a crime, a felony, a serious felony. And he had obviously not given any thought to it. So he figured, well, logically, if they're going to call it murder, there must be a punishment attached to it. When he didn't understand, the pro-life movement has been always careful to say that there should be no punishment for the woman. They would blame it on the doctor, and they would try to take the doctor's license away from them. But it never was consistent, obviously, morally or politically or whatever. But the pro-life movement has always taken that position. There's no harm. There should be no harm done to the woman. But Trump took it literally, and God knows what he meant. Maybe I should have pushed further and said, "What do you mean? A civil penalty? Some kind of fine? Imprisonment? What are we talking about here?" And what was he talking about? And I'm not sure he had any idea what he was talking about. And I knew he was new to politics. And by the way, I don't think he ever studied history or the humanities or literature or anything in college. I think all he ever studied was a way to make some money, the business part of college. Mm. And I don't think he has any knowledge of anything about our history. And he would say things, did you know that? And he'd be saying these odd things. Did you know that? And Lincoln was this or that. Yeah, we all know that, Mr. President. You're the one that just learned it. He had no interest in. I said in the book, the man did nothing to prepare for the presidency in his life. Nothing. But he was frighteningly effective as a politician and still is.
Chris Matthews is our guest. The name of the new book is This Country, My Life in Politics and History. It's published by Simon & Schuster. You recall a moment where you have a conversation with your dad where Ronald Reagan is saying, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And your father is impressed by that. And you say, well, I've heard him say that same line before. And he said, well, I hadn't. And then you go on to tell the story about Jack Kennedy and Coca-Cola. And I'm hoping that you can tell us about it, because it is a great political anecdote and story and lesson ultimately.
Well, if you're sentient in American life, if you have your ears open, you will hear a Coca-Cola commercial every once in a while. In fact, a lot, especially in the summer. Things go better with Coke. I mean, you will hear the latest jingle. It's the real thing. They're always very effective ads, and they're always around. And Kennedy said, why do you think Coca-Cola advertises? Everybody knows there's Coca-Cola. Everybody in the world knows it exists. They know it's at the store if you want to buy it. They know that. Why do they keep advertising? Because people don't think about it. They don't sit around thinking about Coca-Cola. They know it exists. They know they can go buy it if they want to. They know roughly what it costs and how much they like it, but they don't think about it. So they don't buy it unless they're encouraged and sort of clued into it. Every once in a while, oh, remember how much you like Coke? It's hot out. When you like a cold Coke, they always say ice cold Coca-Cola. And his argument was that politics is like that. The people know there's presidents and senators and governors. They know all that, but they don't think about it. They think about other things. How they're going to pay for the groceries. How's it going at work? How are the kids doing? How much they get along with their spouse? Blah, blah, blah. And so that's why politicians have to advertise. And he said it was his argument for why he always started his campaigns very early, because he said it would take almost 2 years to convince people that they're running, or maybe not 2 years, but a long time. He always started early. He said, because you got to get people focused. That was his argument. People have other things on their mind. It's as simple as that. My dad's point was he hadn't been doing what I've been doing, sitting there vigilantly watching everything the opposition had to say, and had heard Reagan say that before. He's just an average guy, reads the paper, but he's not a political junkie. And his point was, you better say that a number of times. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? So you get everybody to hear it,
You're such a political animal, and you certainly get that sense in the book. You ran for Congress early on in the early 70s and lost in the primary. And then there was much talk about the aforementioned Senator Arlen Specter, that you were going to challenge him in your home state of Pennsylvania. Did you ever feel, or do you feel, even in recounting these stories in the book, that a part of you've led such a full and rich life, but that maybe there was something missing and that you never got to serve and to be a politician in the way that you have seen as in an ideal way that you have described it through your writing over the years?
Well, Joe, just to keep sane, I can't go back and look at paths not taken. It's a way to make yourself crazy. I could have done this. I could have done that. I did take seriously running for the Senate in Pennsylvania, even though I didn't live there. I hadn't lived there in 4 decades. But Gene McCarthy, one of my heroes, the senator who really led the crusade against the Vietnam War from Minnesota, quit the job of senator when he had it and could have been reelected again. He said, I'm quitting it. He said, because it's a job and I don't like that job. Because being a senator, if you really want to rationalize not running, which I have to do because I didn't run, is that it's a job. You sign on to represent all the interests of your state. If somebody calls you up from a small town in Pennsylvania, says, I need a new sewer system put in, I'm coming down to Washington to spend the week, let's have dinner, blah, 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 work with your staff. You have to be truly enthusiastic about that. Not writing an article that week, an op-ed piece or something, or going on Meet the Press or something. You have to be focused on that. You have to carry the water for people from your state. And you have to be, if to be a good senator, you have to really like doing it. I have a brother like that. He likes doing this. He was a local politician. He likes all that stuff. He liked being a county commissioner. He enjoyed doing stuff for people. And there are exceptions, like Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was sort of a big picture senator. But most senators are worker bees, focused entirely on the drudgery of representing very prosaic causes. Particular things have to be done and constantly doing them. So I wouldn't be particularly good at that. But then again, I would have loved to be a United States Senator. It's a wonderful title. I grew up with advising consent and growing up with Jack Kennedy, and to be a senator was a great thing. I love talking about being a senator. But I didn't live in Pennsylvania anymore, and I didn't have any way of putting a campaign together, and I was working at a job I was good at. And there was no way to make the transition unless I'd been willing, Joe, to quit the job hardball, just quit it cold, give it up, give up the contract, everything, walk away from it, and spend a number of months sort of reintroducing myself as a citizen of Pennsylvania and putting together a campaign together. And I did worry at the time whether it just wouldn't happen. It just, all of a sudden, it didn't take off. It just didn't happen. I didn't rally the people. But I think looking back, I could have beaten Specter and won the nomination and won the beat him. I definitely think I could have beaten him in the general. And that's why he switched parties, because he was not well placed. That's why he became a Democrat after I pulled out. So, and then of course, if I was senator from Pennsylvania, if you want to carry this further, I would have been eligible to really run for president in 16 and 20. So, yeah, I think about it.
So let's go to, for a moment, and only a moment, but to Super Tuesday 2020, because as you say, you'd have to, even on thinking about that Senate race, you would have to abruptly leave a job that you were really good at. Well, that's ultimately what you did, wasn't it? Was abruptly leave a job you were really good at.
Yeah, well, what happened was there was an article that ran in Gentleman's Quarterly Online, said that 4 years before that, had complimented a person in the makeup room when they were sitting in the makeup chair, and I was the next, and I'd compliment in front of everybody, complimented them on their appearance. Well, that wasn't appropriate, and I said so, and I quit. I didn't want to deal with stretching it out with NBC or MSNBC. I want to do it myself, my way. So I quit.
Did you ever regret that? Did you ever think, oh, all right, maybe I could have ridden those choppy waters on this boat to see how it would have come out?
No, that's funny. It's ironic, and I know that doesn't seem right, but it's true. I decided to do it my way. I didn't want to get into an extended argument with my network. I didn't want to take a short-term or long-term suspension of some kind, which I thought was going to be the option. I didn't want to deal with what was going to happen. I just didn't want to do it. I knew what the fact was there. It wasn't a he said, she said. I was I was honest. And that's one thing I am. I'm candid. I said I did it. I think it's wrong. I understood the position I was putting the network in by doing that. I took it. It's not so different than other decisions in my life. It's something to think about for other people. But for me, it was easy. And my wife and I were sitting there doing it, talking to the president of the network at the Four Seasons in DC. And it all happened within a few hours. I mean, we made this decision Saturday after that story ran. I was down in Charleston ready to cover the South Carolina primary that day. I found out recently that I had a ticket already written for me to go to North Carolina to cover the Super Tuesday the next Tuesday. So I was there moving on to the next step, and this thing hit, and I just said, okay, I'm out of here.
I know this obviously wasn't probably on your mind, but of course, as an audience member, we looked at the TV as you were saying these words and felt almost abandoned. Like, oh God, well, now what do we do without Chris for the rest of this crazy election?
I know. I do miss, I miss the affection of the audience members. People say wonderful things to you when you're in the air with several million people watching every night. And they understood where I came from. They knew who I was. They had similar backgrounds. They're men and women, but even they're African American and white people. I mean, it was a wonderful, affectionate relationship. They were good company to me, and I hoped I was good company to them. And I did it for 20 some years. Never saw a sundown during the week. That's one thing I like doing, seeing the sun go down at night. but you know, I wish I'd been able to quit under different circumstances, but that's where it played out. And I do want people to know, and I think they did know, that I'm who I am. I'm the same guy in this conversation as I am on the air, and I'm the same guy in life as I am on television or radio. I'm the same guy. They know that. And no, I haven't lost any friends over this. People know. They can imagine me saying something impulsive in that kind of a situation. They get it, and that's good. I like the fact that people don't feel let down by me, except that I'm not on the air. That's what they're let down by.
The minute, I don't think it was 5 seconds after you were on Joy Reid the other night, talking about your book, where people were on Twitter saying, "Oh, he's getting ready for a comeback."
Yeah, maybe. I've never kept up with that, so I don't know. That's not true. I'm not coming back to a show. That was pretty clear. I've never said that. So.
Yeah. You know, the first time I ever met you was I was covering the '92 Democratic primary in Manchester, New Hampshire. And
by the way, were they saying it positively or negatively? What were they saying?
No, they were saying it. They were saying it positively, and hoping. I think, and hoping.
Well, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I certainly. I mean, you know, nobody has a right to a show, but you never right to free speech. And I think I'm going to keep writing columns. And if somebody asks me to come on, I'll say something on the air. I don't think that's too complicated. But going back to a show 5 nights a week, I was doing 5 nights a week, and I was doing the Sunday show, the Chris Matthews Show. And I had an agent pushing me to do a road show like Bill Maher does. Oh my God, 26 Saturdays in a row was going to blow me apart. I can't do that. I was tired on Friday night.
Well, Chris Matthews' new book, This Country, My Life in Politics in History. The book is just extraordinarily fun and very informative as well. It's published by Simon & Schuster. Chris Matthews, a great pleasure and honor to speak to you as always. Thank you very much for spending
Joe Donahue, thank you. You got a great name, by the way. Love
that. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe Donahue.
Can't run from the Irish, yes.
We love you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We enjoy hearing from our listeners about our shows. You can email us at book@wamc.org. You can listen again to this or find past book shows via podcast or at wamc.org. Sarah LeDuc produces our program. Bookmark us for next week. And thanks for listening. For The Book Show, I'm Joe Donahue.